Episode 35. Hello, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff, and I'll be your host as we listen to eyewitness encounters involving one of the most terrifying cryptids, dogmen. For tonight's show, we're welcoming back Mike Lawrence. As you'll remember, Mike came on last week to tell us about those 3 terrifying Dogman encounters he had. Mike, welcome back to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you, Vic.
Last week you came on and told us about the 3 encounters you had with dogmen. I wanted to thank you for coming back to tell us about all these strange things that are going on around your house. Could you fill us in on where you live, however much information you're willing to give on that?
I live in Northern California, north of Sacramento, and just south of the California-Oregon border.
Please give us an idea of what the layout of your property and surrounding area is like.
My house is an older house. It's a really thick brick house. Solid wood beams, 4x6s and 6x8 beams. Solid house. The outlying property has a chain link fence all around. And then the fencing around my yard is wooden 6-foot tall fences. The backyard split between 2 separate backyards by a wooden gate back behind a shop attached to the house. And then in the back, past my backyard, there's an outlying building. It's probably about 16 feet tall. The beams are 4x4 beams with the tin metal roof angled, used as like a parking garage type of shop area. And it has another shop next to it that it attaches to, like an A-frame metal roof shop. And then behind that, there's a 6-foot chain link fence.
Behind your property, what's going on back there?
Just outside the property, there's a creek that runs pretty much all year, and it goes straight to the Sacramento River. The creek actually comes off the mountains on the west side of the valley. And then there's not a lot of properties up there back behind my house. Open fields, trees, but all the way down into the creek, and it crosses one road. There's a road that goes right down that area, and there's game trails that actually come up through that whole area and then back in the back part of my property. Get deer out there all the time, all kinds of turkey, all kinds of stuff that like to come up to that whole area.
Mike, please tell us about the family that you've got living there in the house with you.
I'm married. I have my wife and my 2 young boys living with me, and I have my dog. She's a chocolate lab mix. She's a pretty big dog. She weighs about 115 pounds. When I'm standing and she's standing up, I can bend my arm a little bit and I can pat her head. She's a big girl.
She sounds like a monster if she's that big.
Yeah, she's a big girl.
I'm glad you've got her there to watch your back. Did your wife believe you when you told her about your dogman encounters before the activity around your home began?
Not before. I didn't tell her about my encounters too much. I kind of started to tell her about it. I saw a little thing on YouTube. It was something else. It wasn't dogman encounters, but I saw it somewhere else, and it kind of triggered that memory in my mind, and I said, I've seen one of those before, and she kind of just looked at me like, what? And I said, yeah, I had seen one. And she kind of was like, okay, yeah, right, whatever. And I kind of just blew it off. I didn't continue after that. Like from the previous show. People just don't believe it. But after everything started happening and and I came across the show just by, I don't know, I guess maybe fate or something. And I started listening to your show for some reason, and I was like, man, this is really starting to hit a nerve. And I just said, hey, look, I sat her down and said, look, I really need to tell you this. I told her about my encounters, and she believed me. She saw the tears falling out of my eyes, and she saw me sweating, and just the tone of my voice, and she's like, yeah, there's no doubt in my mind what you saw was real. I've never seen you shaken up like this, ever. I don't get shaken up by things. But this is definitely get shaken up over.
Until you found out about Dogman encounters, you thought you were the only person in the world to have ever had a Dogman encounter. Please tell us about what it was like to go from thinking that to finding out all of a sudden that, no, there are plenty of people that have been through the exact same thing.
Oh, man. It was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. I felt like Atlas. Just finally the earth just, coming off my shoulders, man. I felt great. And that first night after our conversation, I probably had the best night of sleep I've had in years. Just from the fact that, man, I am not crazy, and I'm not the only person that has seen this. Just getting it out, telling the story, and you actually understanding and telling me more about these things that I ever even thought of or even knew. It was very liberating, and it felt really good, and I can't thank you enough.
Oh, you're welcome. To be honest, Mike, I'm not really sure which one of us had a more enjoyable time with that conversation. I was amped to see the response from you. I got the impression that the weight was finally starting to come off your shoulders, finding out that, no, you weren't the only person to have an encounter with one of these things. I wanted to ask you, Mike, has there ever been a point through all of this where your wife blamed you for them coming around? I know it seems kind of outlandish that a spouse would point the finger at her husband in a situation like this, but when things get really stressful and strange like they've been around your house there, I guess it's not out of the question.
No, I don't think she blames me. She definitely doesn't like me talking about it. Every time I talk about it and I listen to the show and I start learning more and more and my feelings start to come back, and she can see the changes in my attitude and my mood, and she kind of just says, you need to calm down, you need to knock it off, you're getting yourself all worked up, and you need to just stop, because you're starting to make me freak out. Just stop. I think it's more of if it's out there, don't tell me. If you see it, don't tell me. I don't want to know. But unfortunately, I took my advice from you, and I sat her down and I told her, I said, look, the chances of you seeing this is extremely high because of the amount of times that I have seen it. And it seems to be that the more you see it, the more you're going to see it. Kind of like your perception change. Once you see it, you can start seeing it more and more. Maybe that has something to do with it or not, but, and I said, look, the chance of you seeing this is very high, and if you do see it, don't ever look it in the eyes. Don't look at the eyes, because that's an image you are never going to be able to erase from your mind. You'll just have that fear, and I don't want you to look out a window at night and see these eyes and have these night terrors that I have. Just don't look at the eyes. She looked at me and said, are you crazy? If I saw something like that, do you think I would look it in the eyes?
Yeah, that wouldn't be good, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Mike, let's get to the strange things that have been going on around your property. Tell us about the loud noises you've been hearing out on that outbuilding's roof every night for I don't know how long.
It started probably about 2 months ago, where it would happen every once in a while. At about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, I would hear a loud bang, something landing on the roof, on that tin roof, just a boom. And then I would hear footsteps, like walking across the thing. It'll take like 2 or 3 steps, and it's bipedal. When something's walking up on the metal roof, you can tell if it's 4-legged or 2-legged. I mean, it's crystal clear. But it's a bipedal sound, and it sounds like when it walks, you can hear the claws just scratch the metal as it lifts its foot, as it's walking forward. And it would take a few more steps, like it's getting a running start, and it would jump. And you can hear the metal press down and then landing in the dirt. And then it would take a few more steps. I could hear that at about 3 o'clock in the morning. It would happen every once in a while. But then it started getting closer and closer to where it was, maybe once every few nights, and it would go to like every other night. And then it was every night I was hearing it. The same sound up on that roof in the same exact area and location. I didn't think really anything of it, but the feeling I had, like from my other encounters, the feeling that something was there. At first, I didn't really put the two together. I recognized the feeling. I couldn't place it. But then I found your site, and I was listening to all the encounters, reading the stories, and listening to what these things like to do. And then the puzzles would come together. Then it hit me that is exactly what I was feeling. And that is what I'm seeing. Now, I can feel them around, without hearing that sound. I can hear them, I can feel them around, and sometimes I can't even feel them around. Some nights are really good, where they're not around at all, and I'm completely safe going outside. But other nights, I can feel them outside, and I'll wait till the morning to take out my trash.
Oh, I don't think anyone could blame you on that. I can't imagine what that would be like to know that just outside you've got something or some things like that. We still haven't nailed down whether it's one or if it's a group, but I've never told you about this, Mike, through all the conversations we've had, but I can't tell you how impressed I am with your fortitude to hold it together the way that you have through all the things that have happened to you and been happening to you as we talk. I mean, Friday night, we're talking and you heard that crazy deep howl. Speaking of which, before we go any further with the other questions I wanted to throw at you, tell us about that if you don't mind.
I had a friend of ours, their parakeet had gotten out. They've been chasing it and trying to catch it pretty much all day, and so that the last time they saw it was down the road in the group of trees. And my wife said, "Hey, would you mind walking down there and seeing if you can find it and see if you can catch the bird for him?" I said, "Yeah, sure, not a problem." And, I walked down there, and, that's where the game trail comes across down towards the creek, and it, crosses the road, and right in that area is really thick brush and trees, and over in that area, a lot of turkey fed down there, and a ton of deer. I probably saw about 10 to 12 deer at the end of that game trail right there. And, I took a few pictures of them, and, they weren't too skittish. but in that area. And then it started to get kind of dark, and I didn't like the situation I was in. It didn't feel right. So I started walking back. It was just after sundown. So the sun was already down. It was already almost starting to get dark. It was probably maybe a quarter of a mile walk that I did. And so I walked back to my house, and I went out through the house and out to my backyard to take a picture of the hole in my chain link fence. And I thought, hey, this is probably a good time to get this picture now before it gets dark. And I take the picture. My dog was with me, and I took the picture of the hole, and not 10, 15 seconds after that, I took that picture, I heard this deep, deep howl that was no dog. It was no wolf, because we have no wolves here. Deep, deep howl. It was kind of distant. My dog perked up. She heard it, and her tail dropped between her legs, and she kind of whimpered and took off running towards the house. That's when my stomach dropped, and I thought to myself, yeah, it's time to go back in. And that's when I walked back in.
When we were talking about whatever it was when that howl happened on Friday night, I remember all of a sudden it hitting me. I started looking at the clock thinking, oh wow, it's got to be either dark or right on the edge of dark there where Mike's at. And then I'm thinking to myself, what in the world is he doing out there right by the woods when it's either dark or dusk? I remember giving you a hard time about being out there like that, exposed.
Oh yeah, you give me a hard time about that.
Yeah, I don't want to see you become a statistic or anything.
No. From my experiences with them, I can feel when they're close. I mean, I can feel them, like when they're within 100 yards or so. I could feel it. I know that they're there. But at that time, I didn't feel them there. But the sound had to have been that. It had to have been them. Because the sound triggered that feeling in me. There was no dog. I know the different types of howls that dogs do. And we have no wolves in this area. There just isn't any. The way my dog reacted to it, I'm very, very keen on watching the behavior of my dog. She lets me know when things are getting kind of weird, and when things are around that I can't see or hear. Thankful for that.
For anyone listening trying to imagine what one of their howls sounds like, it does sound a lot like what you would expect a werewolf's howl to sound. Deep, powerful, with a little bit of anger mixed in sometimes. Moving on, Mike, you just mentioned the hole in the fence. Could you tell us about that? What's going on? I've seen that picture that you took of the hole, and it just blew me away.
I started hearing the sounds. I went to that part of the backyard area back behind my house and trying to figure out what it was. And I went back there, and it's really dry sand. There's just grass on the ground and kind of leaves, and so you can't really make out any prints out there. It's really, really, really difficult. If not almost impossible in this area. When you're walking across it, it's almost like a crabgrass over very rough sand. So you can't really see it. You can see depressions, but you can't make out an actual track. And so I'm walking around in that area. There's a little gap around this little outbuilding around the parking area for that area where I hear the footprints on. And I go looking back there, and I see this huge hole in my fence. Somebody that's just a little over 6 feet tall could easily bend over and walk into this hole. And the hole, it's pressed down at an angle towards the building. So the chain link fence is bent and pressed in with such force that something pried it open and pushed it open, and it's cut. Like, it's ripped in the middle of the chain link fence. So there's no gap, there's no seams or anything. It's just ripped apart and then pushed to one side so whatever can get through the fence. And I've noticed a slight game trail slowly starting to build up through that area. And I noticed that when we first moved in here, we had tons of feral cats. I mean, there were so many. Over the last couple of months, they've been slowly starting to disappear. They're just missing. Now there's maybe 2 that are still around.
I remember you telling me about that hole in the fence, and then seeing the picture that you snapped on Friday night and sent to me. Speaking of which, I'm going to post that picture and some other pictures that you've taken and sent to me. I'm going to post them on the YouTube version of this show so the listeners can take a look at them and see what we're talking about here. But as you look at that picture of the hole that's been ripped in that chain link fence, you've got to ask yourself, what kind of power would it take to do that? I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. I've never heard of anything like that before. Now, Mike, do they only seem to come around at night, or do they sometimes come around during the day too?
There's a few times where I felt them around in the daytime. It doesn't matter weekend or weekday. There's times during the day where I feel them. I usually try and keep my dog pretty close to me or around me, because I like to watch her and see how she reacts to things. I love my dog. I really love her. Watching her react to certain things makes me feel safer. You know, especially since I feel these things. But then recently, I've not been able to feel them as strongly as I have. Because there's times where I haven't felt them, but how my dog reacts when I did feel them around, she reacted in the same manner, but I never felt them. So I don't know what is up with that.
You told us about how big your dog is and how you take her out there with you when you go out to the edge of the yard and into the woods, but I think in our first conversation you were telling me about how she's been displaying this strange behavior when it would appear that they're around. Tell us about that.
Let me paint this picture real quick. There's 2 sliding glass doors on either side of the dining room. My dining room is pretty big. I don't know the exact dimensions, but it's a huge dining room. And the doors are 6 foot tall by 8 feet wide. And they're both on either side. We have no shutters or curtains on them at all. So they go straight to the backyard. And at night, it just looks like black glass. And since the cats were around, she would be staring out there, and she'd kind of get all excited and kind of just whine and want to go play. And she'd like kind of just jump in the door because she likes to chase them off and like to try and play with the cats. But when I walk by these doors, sometimes I get this feeling that something's watching me and something's standing there. And, you know, I'd call my dog over and she wouldn't come. She'd kind of just sit there and kind of just look over at the sliding glass door and she wouldn't come near me. The further away from the door I got, I'd get closer to her and almost into the living room area, and I'd call her and she'd kind of walk up to me, but kind of slowly. I would walk back to that door and she wouldn't come. You know, she was almost cowering, which was really weird. And that door area, she won't go anywhere near it at nighttime at all. She avoids this one door like a plague at night. During the day, she's fine. she runs around there and she likes to lay down, and the sun comes through that door and she likes to just soak up the sun, but at night she won't go anywhere near it. Recently, it's been starting to go the other door too at night, where she gets really quiet and she stands away from the door, her tail's down, almost tucked under her legs. The hair on her back is standing straight up, and she won't make a sound, and she just kind of slowly walks away backwards and lays down into a corner somewhere where you can't see either door in a corner where she lays.
Before we go into the unfortunate incident that happened to your son, could you tell us about the issues you've been having where it sounds like a claw has been tapping on your windows around the house?
Yeah, that's creepy. I can feel him around, and I keep myself calm. I don't say anything to my wife. I don't want her to freak out. I don't want her to be scared. You know, we just moved into this house a few months ago, and I really don't want to move again. I hate moving with a passion. So I kind of keep it to myself, because I don't want her to just hear it and then, what is that? And kind of walk over to a window, and then boom, there it is. But I kind of keep it to myself, and every once in a while, you hear like a little scratch, kind of just like going across the screen, or a little tap on the window. So if you have long fingernails, like somebody who has almost like acrylic nails, and you tap on a window, that nail tapping, it's almost what it sounds like, but it's a little bit deeper, like it's thicker. And it happens on random windows around the house. Not always the same window. Right in my bedroom, there's a higher window. It's probably 7 feet off the ground. And I would hear it towards the top of the window. I'd lay there and kind of look up, and I have blinds on that one, but I don't open the blinds. I don't want to know. And then right outside my bedroom, there's a security light, there's a motion sensor, and constantly goes off. You know, especially the nights that I feel them around. It'll go off. We put up like blackout curtains, so the sun likes to come in on that side a lot. So we kind of put blackout curtains up on that door there, about the sliding glass door. So it keeps going off, and my wife would kick me and and so, you know, nothing's there. It's just the cats. They're walking around. I said, no, there's no cat. There's something there. I said, no, there's nothing there. Just go back to sleep. She's like, the light's not going to go off. I'm like, watch, it'll go off here in just a minute. It'll go off. And then it would come back on again. But then I would hear a tapping from another window on the other side of the house. I never caught a glimpse of them in the light, ever. Every once in a while, I'll catch a glimpse of movement back into the back corner shadows of my house. There's a lot of dark areas, dark corners in my house. It's not a square house. It's got multiple walls and different angles. There's just no way I can really illuminate my house properly. But yeah, there's just random parts of the house and lights going on and off outside from my motion sensors, and you can't see anything there. And my dog, she knows there's something there. I can't see it.
When you told me that sometimes you'll be laying in bed late at night, and then all of a sudden your dog will open up, start growling right next to the bed because of something that she senses right outside. Having gone through what you've gone through with these things with Dogman, and then all of a sudden being snapped out of a sound sleep by the sound of a big deep growl like that right next to the bed, that's got to be awful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. you're in a deep sleep, and all of a sudden you're in an adrenaline rush with your dog growling, and just that loud, get out of here type of bark, or, the bark that's like, hey, I'm here and I'm bigger than you type of bark, and her hair standing up and she's walking backwards out of the room, still staring at the door. Yeah, that's really creepy.
Oh, I'd say. Now, we've set the table for the very unfortunate incident that happened to your son. I remember when we talked that first time, I was hoping I could head an incident like this off at the pass, but this had already happened before we even spoke, so that went right out the window, no pun intended. But anyway, please tell us about what happened that night.
My son, he has a bunk bed, and it was a bunk bed that I made for him. I made him if anybody's familiar with Star Wars, but I'm a big Star Wars fan. I made an AT-AT bunk bed for my son. He loves it. But this one side of the bed, it's just kind of open up against the wall, and I kind of push it up towards the window, so, he can lay there and open up the window and look outside and whatnot. One night, in the middle of the night, he was sleeping. I heard his blind kind of open, and I'm laying there and I'm listening. He opened his blind, and then he slams it shut and trying to get it shut, and slams it shut, and then I can hear him climb out of his bed and run into my room, and he's like, Daddy. Yeah? Like, what's wrong, buddy? He's like, I had a nightmare. You have a nightmare? Like, what's wrong? He's like, Dad, I saw a monster. But a monster? I mean, there's no monster, buddy. He's like, no, Dad, I saw a monster. I said, were you dreaming? He said, yeah. I said, well, did you just have your blind open? He said, yeah. I said, well, how could you be dreaming? Like, why did you have your blind open? He's like, oh, I was looking at the stars. And then I saw a monster outside my window. And I tried to get him to talk to me about it, to see what he saw. He wouldn't really give me any details of what he saw. And he kind of just shuts down and just won't talk about it. So the details of what he actually saw, I don't know. He doesn't like your avatar for Dogman Encounters. He doesn't like it. It scares him to death. And he always tells me to turn it off. So I think that might have been what he saw outside his window.
Sounds like one might have tapped on the window. I guess he did say he was looking at the stars, so maybe he was stargazing and then one came into view.
Well, outside his window, there's a tree so that he can't really see stars. There's like almost like a cedar tree kind of growing out at an angle, a very short one, kind of going out his window, so he really can't see the stars. And it's really dark on that corner of the house where his room is at. So I'm thinking that he saw something or heard something and opened his blind, and bam, there it was. And that's what I am guessing. He's not really giving me too much details. I'm still trying to get some information out of him, but I don't want to terrify him too much.
He's still young, knowing what age he is old enough to remember things at that age for the rest of his life, but somehow, some way, I sure hope he can put that out of his mind and forget that. I don't want that to haunt him for the rest of his days. That's horrible.
Yeah, he doesn't like to go outside the house once it gets dark. Even with our porch light on, our carport light on, he won't come out here at night. He doesn't like it. And his bedroom is actually towards the front of the house where it had happened, so yeah, he doesn't like it.
Oh, I can understand. I don't think anyone could blame him for that. Do you know of anyone in the area who has had similar problems with tapping on their windows and other strange things like that happening?
Not that I heard about tapping on windows or walking on roofs. But cats have been kind of disappearing randomly around the neighborhood. And at night, you can kind of hear the dogs barking, almost in like a synchronized way, so you can kind of hear the differences of the bark and the bark of the houses that kind of line the creek area and up towards the back end of my house, just how they're barking and then getting quiet. You can hear something going down that game trail towards the back end of my house and into the neighborhood. I mean, you can hear it all the time. So there's still something kind of roaming around.
All right, Mike, what would have to happen? I know you mentioned the fact that you absolutely hate moving, but what would have to happen for you to throw in the towel and decide to move?
Something happening to my family. If my wife actually sees it here on the property, or it gets too brave and tries to come into the house, or we confront it coming outside to go to work in the morning, or even just enjoying, because we like to have company. We have company over the weekend sometimes, and random nights during the week. Even if something comes like around at that time, then we would probably throw in the towel and move. Then it was just too close for comfort. It's not really bothering me too much with them kind of just roaming around and kind of being curious. But it's another when you do something else. That's when I draw the line.
It's so hard to understand how they could have found you there in the first place. I don't understand why you had the 3 encounters to start with, but the fact that they found you and where you lived, that's just something I'll never be able to figure out. It's just so hard to understand. When did all this begin? Through all of our talks, I never did ask you this. How long has this been going on?
It started happening probably about a month and a half, 2 months ago, when things really started happening. I'm guessing it happened when I kind of went on a hike by myself. I like to go on hikes, and I like to find new areas. I really kind of want to take my son hiking. He's getting older and into scouts, and I kind of want to prepare him for Boy Scouts. And so I went and found this new trail area on the BLM land. And I'd probably guess this area is about maybe 10 miles from my house, maybe. And it's right along the Sacramento River area. Up in that area, there's just open land, all the way around. So from that area, you can go up through around where I am at and back around to the back end of my property. So, it's just wide open out here. And so I went hiking out there and just enjoying my day and walked down this trail, probably about 2 miles down this trail, and decided to turn back, and I saw another trail that was just a little further down from the trail that I hiked up on, and I went down this game trail to that trail and started walking back, and there was, I'm out there all by myself. There's nobody. The last person I saw out there was a mountain biker when I first got on that trail, and he actually took that lower trail that I decided to take back towards my truck, but he was long gone. And he was actually pulling up to his car from his bike. So it was just me out there all by myself. So I take this lower trail back down closer towards the river and hiking back on this trail, and I started to get this feeling that something's watching me. It's that same feeling I had from my other encounter, that I'm being watched very closely. And it's studying me, like you're being studied and almost hunted. In this area that I kind of walked up onto, it got dead quiet. Up into that area, there was a lot of lizards, a lot of squirrel. There were butterflies all over the place, birds all over the place. And then when I got into this area, it was a little grove area, really thick brush, probably 7, 8 feet tall, really, really, really thick. Can't really see through it. And it got dead quiet. I mean, there was no birds, there were no butterflies, no lizards, no squirrel, nothing was moving. And that's when I kind of grabbed my hunting knife, held my hand on my knife, unbuckled it, just so I can unsheath it really quick. And I'm walking down the trail, steady pace, nothing quick, not too slow, but just to be aware and looking over my shoulders all the time. And then I started hearing that pacing sound again, off to my left-hand side. The step in the leaves, like the same head step sound. And I kind of almost freaked out again. I've had this before. I know this feeling, and the image triggered in my mind again. I'm thinking, oh my God, how is this possible? There's no way. Is this the same thing that I saw down in Southern California? And I did the same thing. It stopped. And it's in the bushes just off to the left. I'm walking back, take another step. I start going again. I'm thinking, okay, I'm not going to play this game. And I kind of just started walking at a steady pace, and I see this game trail that kind of went up off to the left-hand side, and the shrubs area started to end, within a couple of feet of that trail. I turned and started walking up that trail, and I looked back to my left to see if I can look inside the shrub area, and I see something big go through the shrub onto the trail that I was just at. I didn't get a full glimpse of what it was, but it was definitely something big, and stepped onto the trail where I was just at. And then I continued back up on that trail, looking over my shoulder all the time, looking back behind me, keeping my ears open. And I got back onto the trail where I was at, and there was just squirrel everywhere. Lizards, birds, the normal sounds of the nature, everything. And it just seemed like that area was just like, almost like a kill box is what it sounded like, or felt like. So I get back up there, and I hike back to my truck, and I get in and I drive home. And the only thing I can think of is maybe whatever I came across out there on that trail tracked me down, and it's kind of just harassing me or curious, or I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of.
How far did you say that trail system was from your house?
About 10 miles, maybe.
Okay, about 10 miles. Well, I guess that's not out of the realm of possibility that one of them did follow you home that way. One way or the other, it sure sounds like one of them did.
I think you're right, because of the frequency of things and how things have happened. It slowly started progressing more and more as time has gone on. So it seems like they were kind of scouting, and then now it's boom, yep, yeah, he's here. Yeah, this is it. That's what it seems like.
I know when we first started talking, things seemed to be building up, but at least at this point, from what you've said, it sounds like things are kind of calming down a little bit. I hope that trend continues.
Yeah, I hope so. It's been kind of quiet now for the last 4 nights or 5 nights or so.
Thank goodness. Now, shifting gears here, Mike, when we first started talking, you were in such a bad way, and understandably so because of all the things that had been happening and what you had been through, that I suggested that you talk with another eyewitness that I knew of and that I had been talking with to compare notes on the night terrors that both of you had been and have been currently suffering. I'm not going to reveal this gentleman's name, and I hope you don't either, but could you please tell us about that and how you consequently told me it helped you?
It was really weird is my night terrors were pretty similar to this person's as well. And it seems like they put that, they have some kind of control over that, because it's the same dream every night, all the time. But then, until recently, once I realized this is a dream, I had kind of altered the dream a little bit. But it has been nice to know that somebody else out there, I guess I wouldn't say nice to know, it's kind of horrible to say, but I guess comforting to know that there's somebody else out there that's having the same issues that I am. And it's been helpful for me to talk about it and to have somebody else talk to with similar feelings and worries and terrors. Hopefully I've been able to help him, and, I know he's helped me. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you 100% without any doubt that you have helped him tremendously, the way that you told me it was a huge help for you as well. That's the biggest reason right there where I put you two guys together so that you could compare notes. So, yeah, I'm really glad that helped.
Yeah, it's helped a lot. It's interesting to see that how the people that have these night terrors, how a lot of the night terrors are pretty similar, and it's the same night terror over and over and over again. And, like I said, until recently, once I realized I'm actually dreaming, I have been actually able to alter it a little bit, where, it's kind of helped me not have as bad of a night terror. So.
Well, that's great. I'm glad it at least helped to whatever degree it did. I hate to ask this question, but it's only due diligence that I ask this. Have you seen to date any concrete evidence that points towards it being a fact that dogmen are at the root of all this strange activity?
No concrete fact. The only thing I can go off of is my experiences and my feelings about what had happened to me. The same feeling I get when I saw them there, when they were physically there. That feeling comes back. Like I said, I'm not afraid of the dark. I'm not afraid of the woods. It doesn't bother me at all. I've got a very strong hold mentally, about my imaginations. I don't let it run wild. I like to see what's really there, and I go off of my feelings, my instincts, and my instincts have not proven me wrong yet. My instincts are telling me, yeah, this is what's going on here. And, like I said, there's some nights that I feel them there, and there's other nights I don't feel them there. I'm perfectly comfortable going out into my backyard at night. But there's other nights where I don't even like walking near my sliding glass doors at night, because I know that they're there.
I've got no doubts, Mike, that what's at the root of all that strange activity around your house is a dog man. When you look at all the evidence, it just points in that direction. I can't see it being anything else. Having said that, when you go out at night, do you do anything special to protect yourself?
Around my house?
Yeah.
The only thing I do is I make sure all the lights are on around my house. They don't like to be in light, illuminated at nighttime. I think it might hurt their vision or something. Or they just don't want to be seen at night. They like the fear factor, the ambush factor, the one-up factor is what I'm getting from them. So I try and have as much light on as I can in the areas that I'm going to be at.
That's a good idea. That's about all you can do to protect yourself. Well, Mike, in closing, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Well, just trust your instincts. That's what they're there for. If your instincts tell you something, just listen to it. If you have family members telling you that they've seen these things, or they've seen something, or they feel something, and they hear something. Take it for what it is. Don't try and be scientific about it. Don't try and, hey, I want physical proof about this. Just take it for what it is. Believe people. It really, really helps people cope with what they saw and what they're feeling.
Well, Mike, I can't thank you enough for coming back on and filling us in on all the strange activity that's been going on around your house. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Vic. I really hope I can help.
Oh, you have. Just by putting that info out there, you've done more than you'll ever know. Again, thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you, Vic. I just hope I'm able to help people out. I really want to help.
Well, it's appreciated. Well, don't be a stranger, okay?
No, I definitely won't.
Thanks again, Mike. I hope you have a great night.
You too, Vic. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. If you've had a Dogman encounter and you want to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, you can reach me at contact@dogmanencounters.com. I'd love to hear from you.